Muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon. I'm honored to moderate this second NGI project session. We spoke about self-governed examples, and now we are moving on to digital decentralized identity. Here with me, I have 4 representatives. Elena Martínez Vicente from P2P Models. She is a product designer, and her goal is to co-create inclusive tools. Torsten Lodderstedt, I hope I pronounced it right. He is CTO for yes.com, and he's also going to speak about his own project on decentralized technology, focusing especially on banking. Alexander Blom, he's the founder and CTO for Bloqzone, and he brings together identity concepts with protocols, communication protocols, to protect the participants' identity. José Francisco Ruiz is a ValidatedID business manager. This company created BIB Chain, a decentralized system based on blockchain. It's an NGI European project. He will tell us about it. I would like to start off with Elena, the human side of this panel. Please, Elena, tell us what you do in P2P models. I said that you do tools co-creation, but speaking or chatting with you, you told me that this is rather about case studies. Can you tell us more about this project? In P2P models, we do research on whether the decentralized technologies can help communities with cooperative economies and platforms. We started working with some case studies. We tried to do many things, create tools, work with communities, and many other things. And when we started wanting to create tools, we realized that it was very difficult with the money we had, and also with decentralized technology. Not many people know about this. So recruiting blockchain programmers was like finding a unicorn. It was really complicated, and we moved on to the next phase, and we left that out for the time being. And we started creating prototypes with the case studies we had. We've worked with Amara, a decentralized community of linguists, working with basically subtitles, and also Smart, a European community working with artists and cultural workers. And they are based in Madrid, so it was easier for us to do things in person. For these 4 years, well, after 4 years, we're about to finish the project, and I have more questions than answers, actually. Technologies by themselves, if we work bottom-up instead of top-down, actually, in universities, you design a project. You think of technological tools that might help people in certain situations, but then if you move down to the people or the communities, you realize that things are very different. And the tools you have thought of might not be what they exactly need. So that's precisely what you do your research, right? Yes, that's it. So apart from blockchain, what other technology would be more applicable? What type of technology would be the most appropriate one for decentralization? Should we find other alternatives to blockchain because of the hard it is to find the people it takes? blockchain, I can't speak about blockchain decentralized technology because I don't know much about that. Blockchain is a technology that, how can I put it, that was made from the global north by mainly men to play among each other. Don't worry, this is only being live streamed. You can say anything. Well, there are huge usability challenges because it was made by certain people in a certain place. And it challenges the standards we have when it comes to using the internet. You have to use crypto wallets for anything, so you have to go and explain a smart user what a crypto wallet is. You have to tell them what it is and how to install it and many other things, and you have to explain that they need to pay for it. Every time you do a transaction, you click on OK, and you have to pay for it. So I've realized that there are huge usability problems. It's quite promising for certain things, but when it comes to helping a community with their own social problems, well, we haven't seen much use. P2P Models promote diversity. That is a fact. And it also promotes feminism. That's a transversal topic. How do you work with this? Just like with anything else in any other walk of life, work is a part of life. And feminism, like a colleague of mine called Daniela Roza says, feminism is the entry drug to find out later that things can be done differently. You start thinking differently, and when you apply this to your work, in your environment, you come up with new questions and new structural biases and challenges appear. And that's how you start wondering things and start improving things from the inside. And you do things like making invisible work visible. Programmers are kind of the start in this business, but they do what they do thanks to many other people behind them doing management, communication, design. So we need to value all that. We need to value all the people taking care of the whole working environment. It is not just one person in one position. It's several people making sure that everything is fine, and also making sure that the work environment is the appropriate one. Even during the lockdown, that was crazy. We all know that. And the thing with diversity is because we are diverse, and it's very important to show it in our workspaces. Did I answer to your question? Yes, completely. So to finish off, like my colleague said before, can you summarize in one sentence what the future of the next generation internet is? Can you put it in one sentence? Well, I can give you my own vision. I see that there are great intentions in many decentralization projects, and that's a discussion that we need to bring out onto the streets. There are many free software projects that are great. The problem is that there is certain techno-determinism. And here is where my idea jumps in. You can't do software without multidisciplinary teams. You need social science experts, designers, and all that. So that's the future for me. Teams need to be multidisciplinary, and we all need to be there doing our bit. Thank you very much. And now we move on to the next project. Torsten, your turn. Torsten has been working with identity standards for over 1 decade. He is the CTO for Yes.com, a banking startup, open banking, based on an identity ecosystem. He's going to work on his project that he's going to tell us about. What are you working on now?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, and good afternoon to everybody. As Esther told you, I'm Torsten Lodderstedt, and I've been an identity practitioner for the last 15 years. Being myself responsible for login to services with millions of users, and I've been contributing to technical standards that are used to log into really big websites today, 1 billion of users every day. And I've grown interested in decentralized identity and verified credentials in the last couple of years. And I would like to share my thoughts why this is important, and also make you aware of a new initiative that aims at providing the open source for that identity layer going forward. So, I mean, as we agreed today, we live in an internet society, in a digital world, and I was one of the guys that raised hand to being 24/7 connected every day. But there's an important piece missing in the internet today that makes it a real safe place, and that's an identity layer. As I used to say back in the 90s, in the internet, no one knows you are a dog. And what it means is, if you're really doing serious things, like you want to register for an election, or you want to register your car, you want to register for a dating website, how do you really prove who you are, or what your qualification is, right, if you want to apply for a job? And this is largely missing. So what we do today, even though we are fully digital when it comes to this kind of certificates, identification, and so on, we send PDF files. We scan documents, right? Like my university diploma, which goes a bit way back. And in Germany, for example, we use funny technology where you sit in front of your PC or your phone and have a video chat with an agent, and then you show him or her your ID card. That's not just cumbersome, that's not privacy preserving, and it's insecure. And the funny thing is that the physical world has already adopted digital identity much better than the digital world. I can show you my vaccination certificate that I've stored on my phone. But if I want to onboard a flight to the US, for example, I can't prove that I'm vaccinated in that digital process. I have to do that physically on the check-in counter, right? For me as an engineer, that's ridiculous. I want to have a seamless, secure, and safe experience. And I mean, Regis already gave us an introduction to verifiable credentials and decentralized identity, and I think that's the way to go, right? We need to think identity much broader than just web SSO and login, because that's basically solved, right? We need to digitize everything we need to prove ourselves, what we know, what we can, what we want to do. And a verifiable credential in the end is something that is machine readable, that has an origin, it cannot be tampered with, and no one can abuse that to impersonate me, right? That's very important. And if we look onto that from the perspective of the user, it's very important to provide users with a great user experience, because otherwise it's not going to work. For me, it's very important that my wife, my kids, and my parents understand how that works. That, for me, is the ultimate test. And I think we are not there yet. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, yes, there is technology available, and there are standards available. I myself have contributed to some of those standards. The problem now is there's not one standard, there's not two, there are, I don't know, 15, 20. So it's a really difficult situation but it's not a surprise because this is an emerging market. And that also means nowadays it's impossible, nearly impossible, to provide the user with that tool to manage her credentials, which is called a wallet, right? The digital wallet. In the same way you have a physical wallet in your pocket, users use a wallet, a software agent, to maintain their credentials. And there are already wallets out there. My COVID app is a wallet. The operating system of the smartphone I use has a built-in wallet. The problem is there are a lot of different wallets, but what we want to have is a single wallet that users can use to exercise all the use cases they want to exercise. And what we realized over the course of the last 1-2 years is it's really super expensive to build such a wallet. But without those wallets, I personally think we won't see the breakthrough of verifiable credentials and decentralized identity. The European Union does an amazing and tremendous job towards that target picture with the IDOS2 and the upcoming regulation. And we want to provide the open source underpinning for this kind of stuff. And that's why we have, or I have initiated an activity to spin up a new foundation under the umbrella of the Linux Foundation, well-known open source foundation. And this foundation is called the Open Wallet Foundation. And the Open Wallet Foundation shall gather developers, contributors, supporters from all over the world and shall provide a clean, high-quality open source basis for publishers to build wallets that support different use cases in the different technologies. And we hope to, by joining or by gathering that community under a big tent, we can join forces, share cost, and provide developers around the world with choice to build great wallets, and in that way also to provide users with great choice and with a great user experience to help decentralized ID to make a breakthrough. And we are looking for supporters, so if you want to be part of the game as a contributor, as an advisor, please reach out.
Gracias. Y vais a poder contactarle después.
Thank you, and you're going to be able to contact him at dinner, and I hope that this conversation is going to continue. I think that, Torsten, you covered the main
Challenges that the new use of this paradigm of wallets and verifying credentials you are facing.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I already mentioned one, that's the user experience. I think that's the biggest challenge when it comes to user centricity. So we need to build a user experience that really the average user understands. And I think it makes sense to look onto what the big techs do, as one of the panelists mentioned in the previous meeting. They are doing this kind of user-centric stuff. That's why they are so successful. So we can take a look onto that. The second challenge is security. Since if you have all those credentials on your phone, how do you make sure that no one steals that and impersonates you? So that's a real technical challenge. We can cope with that, given that latest smartphones have what is called a secure enclave or a secure element where you can store keys, for example, but we need to get access to that. But there is not much experience in the market, right? And that's a problem on itself. And the third is a sustainable business model. And I had a conversation with Alexander over lunch about that, and that's a problem that most propositions today have. They do not have a sustainable business model, and that means the funding is not really secured for a long term going forward. Those are the three main challenges I see. We will try to at least contribute to solving the first and the second challenge, and I think that's quite a bit.
The main ones. And just to finish, in a sentence, what is for you the future of a new generation internet or the future of internet?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. We need to make the internet the safe place that it needs to be.
Thank you. Alexander, you're next. Alexander Blom from Bloqzone. Bloqzone fusiona conceptos de...
Bloqzone merges concepts of identity with communications protocols in order to build a communication system that protects the identity of participants.
Bloqzone.
I'm sure all of you have had a phone call from Microsoft offering help with your computer because there's a problem there that you didn't know about, but just give them your password and download a file from a website that they will give you, and all your problems will be solved. And while you're at it, unfortunately, your bank account has been hacked, so we will send you transaction details where you can quickly send all your money to, and then your money will be safe. And the next day you get an email from a very concerned lady who has an uncle, an Algerian general, who has several millions that he needs to ship to the West very quickly. So they seek a reliable person to take care of his millions for the time being. These are scenarios where your first question would be, am I really talking to Microsoft? I'm sorry for the Nigerian general, but what was his real rank in the army? And are his millions as real as the lady calling you up is describing them? So this identity problem is one that we looked at with our project. I come from a telecommunications background, started in the 80s looking for solutions for migrant workers in the Netherlands that had made money and they used it to support their families, so they would want to call home to hear about family circumstances and whether the money had arrived, and the only way they could phone home was go to a so-called special call center where you could also buy drugs, of course, and maybe a woman for the night. So not really the environment where a family father would call to his call home. So we devised a prepaid phone card where they could call to at good rates to their family, and they could do it wherever they wanted. And that was the start of my company. And we went on and shifted to voice over IP in the beginning of this century, and then we became sort of a regular voice over IP company. I'm one of the men you talked about who likes to tinker with technology. So identity and telecommunications was very interesting for me. It was like an interesting crossover that I wanted to get into. So I started with merging telecommunications and let's say old-fashioned credentials. You would set up a phone call, and then you would get a text message, and then you would click the text message, and the text message would direct you to your bank app, and then you would log into your bank app, and then provide your credentials, and then at the other end, people would know who you are. So from the description, you may gather that this was not a great commercial success. There were so many actions going in between, so many different applications open. You had your phone open, and then you had your text messaging open, and then your bank app open. So it didn't work out. What we needed was one app where the identity would be in the application, and the application would also be able to make that call. So that's what we wanted to build, and that's why we applied to SFLab to make that happen, and we were fortunate that our project was selected. And so we joined the SFLab community, built our application, and we also found ourselves under the SFLab rules. There was a question earlier about how do you go forward? Well, one thing SFLab does is it forces you to work with other grantees. So that means that when you leave SFLab, you have a whole ecosystem of other grantees that you know, that you've worked with, that you share technology with, that you are interoperable with. So, and now it's up to us to make it into a success. Thank you.
Okay, and Alex, the same question in a sentence. What do you think is the future of next generation internet?
It's been mentioned before, the big challenge now is, of course, this identity layer that will make the internet safe. And the big question after the identity layer is who's going to implement the identity layer. So is it going to be us, the community, startups, companies, ecosystems, we all together, and then through experience...
And governments. No?
Sorry?
And governments.
And governments, well, yeah, governments too, of course, yes. We'll allow them in the room. Is it going to be us, or is it going to be big tech? I think that's the big issue going on now. So is it going to be Google and Apple, or is it going to be the rest of the world? That's what we're waiting for.
Thank you so much. Gracias.
Thank you. And now I'm going to introduce José Francisco Ruiz, who is business manager from ValidatedID, who is going to talk about VID Chain, the decentralized digital identity system based on blockchain. We have a presentation for support. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you very much to Cyber Voluntarios and to you for inviting me over. I'm delighted to be here in the Decentralized Digital Identity session, which is the title of this session, which has to do with how to empower ourselves as citizens, as people, by using verifiable credentials and the usage of SSI. For us, this model is what allows us precisely to build this identity layer that my colleagues were commenting. We believe that this is going to rely on the SSI technology, but rather than a technology, we have been working on this since 2016, when it was barely a concept at the onset. And to me, this is rather a philosophy. And if you can click on the next slide, it's a philosophy because it allows you to fight against some other identity models. Because when you want to find out who is managing your identity or who claims that is you, well, that's the question that you need to answer. And it's important to start fostering these decentralized identity models where we can regain control over who we are, which is our identity, which are our attributes and features, and how we can protect privacy and confidentiality in everything that we do on internet. Because nowadays, everything is internet. And nowadays, this question is not resolved. We still have too many threads of identity. Governments, your municipality, your bank, your energy supplies management, the health institutions, there are threads of identities, and you are record line in that database, and you're anchored there, and it's up to those institutions to manage your piece of identities. And then we have the federated identities, because you can do the login with Facebook or with Google. And you know that it's just about granting permission. We hurry over that process. But when we're talking about federated identities, we could call them feudal identities, because you become a servant to those big tech companies. Because what do they do with our data? They become intermediaries of our identity. And when you want to claim that you are you don't do that. They do it for you. And we do that every day. Why? Because it's a pain in the neck, because we have 500 accounts, we have lost control, we no longer know where the information is right now. The GDPR is a failed attempt. They introduced many hurdles with a cookie acceptance banner, but once they have the data, they're not going to let them go. And it's important how to regain the data that they're using of us, in which context, and what are we granting permission for in terms of usage of our data. So sovereign identities or self-managed identities or decentralized identities, it all boils down to the same concept. It has to do with the philosophy or that paradigm of having a human-centric approach, as claimed by Fabrizio and some others before, so that we ourselves have control of the information concerning us. This is solved through technology, through cryptographic wallets that you keep control of, and you request credentials, which are going to be signed by a trusted verification entity. And once you have the credentials, you manage them and you present them where necessary with awareness and in a granular way. On the previous slide, there was an image of the identity layer. Take a look. This model seems to be decentralized, and in some states they don't like it so much. But in Europe, we are fostering that. Hamelin was talking about that. ADAS too. There is a draft, and they want to have the same level of legal credentials to that when comparing that with your digital certification. Once this is passed, this regulation, it's going to be abided by all the public administrations. I don't know how quick we're going to be in implementing that, and by all the strategic industries. So when you go to your bank, to your insurance company, you can identify yourself with these credentials in a safer way, in a user-friendlier way, and it's going to avoid many phishing cases, although it's true that we need to solve some issues yet. But this is being fostered from a Central Europe level, and it's important for us to know that, and we need to push this forward. Even though I represent a company here, I'm also a person, and I have children, and I want this for me. For myself, I would like to have control over my information, and I want to be the person that at any point in time can authorize and present the identity piece that corresponds to a determinate process. And this allows us, from a technical standpoint, to do interesting things. For example, some use cases that are being published by the EU have to do with demonstrating that I am older than 18 years old. I was born when the internet was born. It's not necessary to say it, but I'm above the 18-year-old mark. Or sometimes it's more important to say that you're a doctor rather than your name, because the important thing is that you're a doctor specializing in a certain field. And this is done through SSI. Identity is about this. Identity is not, for the Spaniards, your digital ID card on the mobile phone. It's not your digital certificate. It's a whole set of entities, attributes. If you take a look at your wallets, you're going to have your credit cards, transportation card, and maybe the Blockbuster card or your favorite soccer team membership card, and you keep them in the wallet. So the idea is that you can carry them out when you relate in the market, in presence and remotely through the internet. And it's important because this is going to render many processes easier, and these credentials are programmable, so you can speed up any process, because it's not like digitally signing the PDF where you need to open the PDF file and there's people behind them signing them. You can do that through a smart contract, for example, and there are some projects in Spain that have received funding from early adopters that are being used for social user cases. In Catalonia, there is a project that has to do with the people that are in a special situation with risk of social exclusion, and sometimes they cannot access subsidies because you need to provide with a lot of documentation or they're reluctant, and this grants us confidentiality. We have the necessary data in order to present it where it's relevant. So in the Catalan government, what we did in the open administration of Catalonia is that you can identify yourself. This is in pre-production because the EPSI European blockchain is in production but not yet ready. And once you identify yourself, you can download in your wallet a verifiable credential signed by the OC and with the number of people that live in your family. And you can go to the company for water treatment and you use these credentials in order to get a discount because more than 5 people live in your home, for example. So it is a way in which we fulfill the GDPR. And the company cannot, the town hall cannot send directly the information to the water treatment company because there is a GDPR legislation prohibiting that. But people here become a hub for information, an element that fosters interoperability. So it opens many doors. So we are going to see how we interact on a peer-to-peer basis. Well, I had national health card that I needed to apply for in Valencia and a different one for Madrid. And now it is interconnected and they're trying to interconnect all the national health system and how to release the information that they have on us. And they do not release it so freely. But it's me who is the hub. The interoperability piece is me. Please give it to me, and I'm going to share it as I deem appropriate. And this is a win-win. This is precisely the model of internet, which I believe is going to be useful for the future for all of us in the future. I hope that it's going to happen as of now. Thank you. And now to wrap up, just one sentence for the next generation. Decentralized. That would be the key word. Okay, any question? Not you, Peter. Thank you very much. José Luis. This model, the decentralization of our information in our bank or whatever, which is managed by another institution for us, do you think that this decentralization entails a very high risk of attacking ourselves, so to speak, in terms of if you grant access to this, you're granting access to everything? Do you believe that the current system, with a lot of phishing, with a lot of fake news, and a lot of, a lot of phishing, basically, do you think that this is safe? Because it's not safe. But centralized system is a unique attack point, and it's easier to introduce censorship and to lose. Just to give you an example, 2 days ago, well, and we still are receiving Ukrainian migrants. I was at a meeting at the Association of Doctors, and the regional minister of that community said that they were going to open all the vacancies to the Ukrainians that could prove that they held a medicine degree or lawyer's degree, but they cannot prove anything. Decentralization allows you to have all this information available. And we need to continue to work in security standards, obviously, but so that no one can block this information so that you can move around, and in case of a disaster, this information is not wiped out. And centralization poses a problem for that. Decentralization, that is.
So my question goes to any of you. It's not particularly for, for Elena or for anyone. And even if possible, actually, I would like to hear several points of view. It's a very general one. So when we are working or using identities that have been created by these huge tech companies, basically we are also going into surveillance capitalism, right? So we are really going into this system that is keeping us there and making, being the owner, right, of all our processes. Now, when we are talking about having or creating this European sovereign identity, my question is, aren't we potentially empowering our governments to become surveillant and actually, go into surveillance governance and really go, for example, direction China, right, with social coins and stimulating certain behavior that that the government might want. So that is the question. So one is how do we see giving this power to our own governments? By the way, I'm into NGI, so I'm actually in pro of all this decentralization, but that is one of the concerns that I have. And then the other way, going into standardization of, for example, these decentralized types of identities, and indeed related with the previous question, if we are going to have a system that is standardized and that owns all our data, basically we might be given a key to someone to hack all our data. I know you mean decentralized means different points of access to our system or to hack our system, and there's encryption and so on, but in any case it's a unique standard to get to the data, right? So what is the security behind it?
I can start and
You take the first, I take the second.
okay. All right. So if I'm summarizing correctly, we're moving from self-sovereign identity gives us the possibility, like you said, to move away from Google and Apple and move to a digital identity. And then your question is, right now, of course, Google and Apple are monitoring what we do because every time we use their passwords, they know, okay, so you went there, and you went there, and it was this time, and so on. And so that wouldn't be possible in the case of a digital identity because, of course, we technical people, especially him, thought about it, and José also, not me, but the rest of the panel carefully thought about this problem, and on paper it's solved. So on paper, theory, no problem, and on paper it's solved. So on paper, theory, no worries at all. But the trouble is in the details, I think. If self-sovereign identity is going to be implemented in Europe in exactly the way it's supposed to work on paper, then we're fine, we're great. Less surveillance. On the other hand, if, we're making a European standard for this, so there's a lot of interests in the room that want to have influence on this European standard. So how's that discussion going to go? And actually, we're right in the middle of that fight. The standards are being discussed as we speak. So we have to be very attentive. We have to be there and keep a close eye on this discussion and that it does what we want as citizens, and not give governments a slight, a hole to peek through and see what's going on. So.
And I would like to add. Can I get the mic? Hello? Hola? Hola? Yeah, okay. So I would like to add to that. As Alexander said, the devil is in the details. So, I mean, if you read the text of the regulation, the IDAS regulation, it's pretty clear on the requirements regarding privacy. So, for example, a wallet provider is not allowed to monitor any action you do with the wallet, especially towards relying parties. However, since there is some ideas or some objective to build European standards, it turned out that the way the technical design works right now, we are introducing a super cookie. Because all the credentials that we have in our wallet are tied to the wallet, and the wallet has a unique identifier. I think we need to be carefully and really watch that space. And that's my hobby right now. And to the second point regarding standards and security, you need to distinguish. Most standards are here to foster interoperability. And there are standards that also come with a security threat model and advise how to secure it. However, as I already stated in my contribution to that panel, there are so many standards. So this is part of the problem. This space is so complex and it's so immature that we also need to be very carefully. So I'm more pro doing something that is simple, well understood, and security analyzed. That's very important. So for the standardization work I'm involved in, you can bet there is a security threat model, and there is some security advice. And I think that's very, very, very important, because we are not going to fiddle and play around with user data, right? That's much too serious. Especially if you go into the e-health space, for example, right? I mean, I do just do banking, right? This is about money. But health and all that stuff is much more serious, right? Those are my 2 cents.
Thank you.
La última y rapidito todo, por favor.
I fully agree with that. We need to have multidisciplinary teams to define and come up with new solutions. I wanted to know your solution regarding how can we make more women focus on this, especially those women that are already working in social things, so they can contribute to the tech industry. In my case, I'm very experienced in this social aspect, and I'm now starting to get involved with technology. And I know there is a barrier to access this new world. I wanted to know what we could do to get more engaged. Very good question. I don't really know. I guess we have to raise the issue even more and be aware that teams must be multidisciplinary to come up with valid solutions. Teams must have different approaches, and that happens in the academy and also the tech industry. In the Complutense University where I work, every department is separate from the rest. Speaking with other colleagues from other European universities, they can't believe this. And it's our goal to speak up and speak about multidisciplinary teams. Right now, there are many, in different institutions, there are new social science profiles coming in. Because it does help. It's very useful. And it helps create things more in touch with reality. But we need to work on it more. It's not usual yet. And having women in technical teams is also difficult for us. Thank you.
Os dejamos con el siguiente panel en muy buenas manos.
You're in good hands for the next panel.